Order. We'll start with questions to the Secretary of State for Defence, Steve McCabe.
Number one, sir.
Minister.
Good afternoon, Mr Speaker. The MOD continues to process ARAP applications at pace thanks to the recruitment of more caseworkers and improved systems and processes. In the first 4 months of 2023, we issued over 12,200 eligibility decisions. We aim to process all outstanding initial applications by August 2023.
Steve McCabe.
Well, I thank the Minister for that response. I've recently written to him about a family still trapped in Afghanistan whose case, I was told in January, was being processed by the MOD. But, Mr Speaker, it's about more than a constituency case. The standing of our armed services are affected by this. Scandals like the pilot threatened with Rwanda don't help. Does the Minister recognise that the shambles over our treatment of Afghan refugees is damaging the reputation of our military, with obvious implications for future operations?
Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, I certainly don't recognise the connection that the honourable gentleman has made. The offer made through ARAP, through the scheme to bring Afghans who served alongside the UK armed forces and whose lives are now at risk as a consequence to the UK, is being honoured. It continues to be a major line of effort by the MOD. We have had hundreds of thousands of applications, the vast majority of which have come from people who either served in the Afghan National Forces, who, whilst their effort was heroic, was never who ARAP was aimed at, or even people who never had anything to do with the UK armed forces at all. Now, their desperation to leave their country is understandable, but the ARAP scheme was always what it was set up to be, though the evacuation of those who served alongside the UK armed forces, and that continues to be something that the MOD is putting a lot of effort into delivering, and we will complete the processing applications by this summer.
Sir Julian Lewis.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Does my right honourable friend the Minister accept that whilst people who served with our armed forces are at grave risk within Afghanistan, even when they cross the border into Pakistan, they are not out of danger. If they cross the border without papers, they could well be sent back. So what pressure are we putting on the Pakistani authorities to make sure that no one who served with British forces is sent back to a terrible fate while we are processing their applications?
Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, the right honourable gentleman gives me the opportunity to pay tribute to the Pakistan government and the cooperation that they have shown in helping us to deliver ARAP. We are not encouraging people to cross the border illegally, and the Pakistan government has given us a number of windows in which to bring people across legitimately. There's a grown consular section at our High Commission in Islamabad to support those who are in Pakistan waiting for their onward transportation to the UK. But clearly, and the honourable gentleman has raised specific cases with me in the past, if he knows of people who are at risk or who are being pursued in a way that I don't think is our agreement with the Pakistan government, I stand ready to take up their case through our High Commission with them.
Patrick Reddy.
Number two.
Secretary of State.
The National Maritime Security Strategy details the Government's approach to maritime security. The MOD funds direct operational activity which contributes to maritime security, including continuous at-sea deterrent, ocean surveillance, maritime domain awareness capabilities, and additionally the MOD supports the Joint Maritime Security Centre, a multi-agency organisation who support wider maritime security throughout the UK marine area, including Scotland.
Patrick Reddy.
I'm not entirely sure this is the advert for the strong, broad shoulders and strength of the Union that the Minister would like to think that it is. Can he confirm that there's...
Order. I'm sorry, but we can't have conversations going on with the box. Patrick Reddy.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I wonder if the Secretary of State can confirm that there's not a single armoured surface ship permanently based in Scotland right now. How exactly does that enhance our maritime security, protect our undersea cables or offshore infrastructure, or make Russia feel any less emboldened about sailing into UK waters?
Well, first of all, there are some of the most formidable subsurface boats in the world based at Faslane that, let me tell you, does make the Russians calculate. But of course, the SNP, Mr. Speaker, want to get rid of that, make 10,000 people redundant, and then fantasise about how that's going to do it. Secondly, a warship is best used at sea, not at port. That's how you deter Russia. Tying it up alongside empty, with no doubt the Scottish Navy under an independent Scotland, is hardly going to frighten a person.
Right, so let us go to Shadow Secretary of State John Healey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Defence Secretary is right, of course, for strong maritime security. We need our Navy ships at sea, not in the dock for repairs. And for the last 2 years, the Defence Secretary has been telling us, I quote, "We're on track to deliver more days at sea for ships." Yet, in last year's data, 8 of the Navy's active warships never went to sea at all, and the new Prince of Wales carrier, since it entered service, has spent just 267 days at sea and 411 days in dock for repeated repairs. So why is he still failing to get more of our ships, more of the time, at sea to keep Britain safe?
Tuesday.
Well, Mr. Speaker, first of all, it's very normal for a third of a fleet to be alongside for maintenance, deep maintenance, and indeed preparation to sail and training. That is not unusual. Secondly, the claim that I made was to get more days at sea off the Navy rather than days alongside, and that is indeed the case. If he talks about more ships and more days at sea, he makes the point that there are not enough ships maybe at sea at the same time, which is exactly why I commissioned the propulsion improvement process to get the Type 45s made under his government actually back out to sea rather than tied alongside. We've now completed 3, one at Camel Laird, one at Portsmouth, the second one in Camel Laird in Merseyside, with tremendous success, and they will be out and more available. And if he wants to talk about the aircraft carrier, Mr. Speaker, I'm responsible for lots of things. I didn't commission the build and the design of these aircraft carriers that we're having to rectify. That would be his party opposite.
Christian Wakeford.
Question number 3, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With your permission, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to answer this question 3 and 15 together. In the last 7 years, the Ministry of Defence has invested more than £936 million in service family accommodation improvements. Currently, just under 97% of MOD SFA meet or exceed the government's decent home standard. Only these properties are allocated to service families.
Christian Wakeford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over the last couple of years, I've been fortunate to visit bases across the UK and spoken to many servicemen and servicewomen. The recurring theme is that accommodation is beyond poor, and having seen family accommodation firsthand, I'd have to agree with them, having seen cracks and mould on the walls of families' bedrooms. The Minister responded to an urgent question on this topic on the 20th of December. So can he outline what his department has done to improve this awful situation for our heroes and their families since then?
Minister.
Well, I'm grateful to the General. We all want to see our armed forces service personnel staying in living in good quality accommodation, and the key to that is, of course, the investment, which is why I hope he will recognise and welcome the huge investment we've put into this space. £936 million in the last 7 years, as I said, £185 million alone, and I can confirm investing at least a further £1.8 billion over the next 10 years.
John Valdender.
Speaker, I welcome the investment that has been put in over the last 7 years, as the Minister says, but he's, of course, dealing with a backlog from the last 20. Will the Minister, my honourable friend, visit RAF Odiham in my constituency to see some of the problems that have been caused by poor contractors and to help discuss some of the solutions needed with the service families there?
Well, I'm grateful to my right honourable friend, and absolutely will be more than happy to visit. This is a really important issue. I do recognise the challenges that exist. It's complex, it's built up, as he says, over many years, but we're putting the investment in place and we're determined to deal with this issue.
Shadow Minister Luke Pollard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In March, Labour launched Homes Fit for Heroes, our campaign to highlight the failings of defence housing for service personnel. One member of the armed forces who has served for over 2 decades told us they feel pushed to leave the army due to their house being in such a state of disrepair they describe it as unfit to live in. The government could have solved this crisis over the past 13 years if they wanted to, but it's getting worse and worse. With personnel leaving because of poor housing, will this problem be fixed by the time of the next general election, or will the Minister be leaving it to the next Labour government to clean up this Tory mess?
Minister.
Well, it's a pleasure to engage with the Labour front bench for the first time. It's interesting, Mr. Speaker. First of all, again, it doesn't welcome the significant investment we put in place. Of course, we do recognise that we've had issues with mould and so on. These have been long-running, long-standing. I would emphasise that the maintenance backlog from December is now down by 75%. But he might want to reflect on the fact that under his government, he oversaw PFI contracts for service properties, which I can confirm in Bristol, Bath and Portsmouth had a cost of £25,000 per home, whether they were occupied or not, Mr. Speaker.
Janet Davey.
Question number 4, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I should like to answer questions 4, 5 and 8 together. We continue to deliver a range of services to our veterans and their families, which include pension and compensation payments and tailored support through our Veterans Welfare Service and Defence Transition Services. We are also pressing ahead with our £40 million transformation programme, which will digitise old paper-based practices involving improving processes and creating a single entry point for pensions and compensation by the end of 2024.
David.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The number of claims leading to financial compensation through the Armed Forces Compensation Scheme has dropped from 65% to 47% since 2011 to 12, while rejections rose from 24% to 41%. Can the Minister say why this is, and how does he and the Veterans UK plan to address this?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the digitisation programme that I referred to in my initial response to the Honourable Lady's question will make a big difference. And in fact, the early evidence is that that is the case. My right honourable friend, the Minister for Veterans Affairs, recently visited Veterans UK and was hugely encouraged by what he saw. And my right honourable friend, the Minister for Defence, People and Veterans, who sends his apologies, Mr. Speaker, for not being able to be here today, is on this very closely. I suspect that whatever the failings of the past, the transformation process should lead to significantly better outcomes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister will know that 14% of veterans in England and Wales are female, and in a recent survey, 23% of those veterans said they'd suffered from sexual harassment whilst in the armed forces. A further 23% said they'd been subject to emotional bullying. These have significantly contributed to the PTSD cases in female veterans. Can the Minister set up what the government are doing to try and ensure these veterans get the best support they can and to ensure we actually get the support while they're serving, so we can encourage more women to join the armed forces and meet the government's targets of 30% of armed forces being female in the next 5 years?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, can I thank the honourable gentleman for raising such an important issue, and gives me opportunity to pay tribute to the work done by an honourable friend both during her time on the Defence Select Committee and in her time as a minister in the department. This is an issue that the department is working on. The Defence Secretary has made it a priority that we address any remaining issues around the culture within our armed forces. And as the honourable gentleman notes in his question, we need to make sure that that extends to the support we offer to female veterans as well.
Liz Cunningham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Further to the question raised by honourable friend the member for Birmingham, Selly-Oak, ministers will be aware of the series of articles in the Independent newspaper campaigning for asylum protection for veteran Afghan pilots and others who fought with the British forces in Afghanistan at great personal, mental and physical cost. Can the Secretary of State confirm once and for all that these veterans will have their asylum applications processed quickly and not one of them will be deported to Rwanda or anywhere else?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the honourable gentleman is referring to a veteran of the Afghan National Security Forces rather than the UK Security Forces. And I said in response to the original question on ARAP, the terms of ARAP from the very beginning were around those who had worked with the UK Armed Forces in direct support of our role in Afghanistan, not the entirety of the Afghan National Security Forces. The case that he refers to, the gentleman only applied on the 9th of April. We are looking at whether or not there are any special circumstances under which his application could be approved. But in principle, as a member of the Afghan National Security Forces, rather than somebody who worked alongside the British Armed Forces, he would not automatically be in scope.
James Ray.
Mr. Speaker, there is one group of veterans for whom a terrible injustice was done many years ago now, namely the LGBTQ+ soldiers, sailors and airmen before 2001, who lost their rank, who were dismissed, who lost their pensions, and to this day that has not been restored. Now, I know that the government have appointed Lord Leveson to look into this matter and try and rewrite some of these wrongs. When will that report be brought before the House? Will there be an oral statement on the matter so we can cross-examine ministers on it? And is the Minister confident that he will now find a way of righting those dreadful wrongs?
Mr. Speaker, I personally agree very much with the sentiment of my honourable friend's question. The way that people who were gay was treated during their service in the armed forces in earlier time does not reflect the values of the modern British Armed Forces. The review, I'm told, will be here soon, and we will make sure that its lessons are learnt and adopted by the Department.
Michael Penning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Today is the 15th of May, the day that Captain Robert Norek from the 1st Battalion, the Grenadier Guards, was taken by the IRA and murdered. His murderers are still walking free, and we don't know the truth. Would the Minister acknowledge that those that served an op banner need to know the truth about what happened to Captain Robert Norek? And the veteran groups in my constituency, my honourable friend's constituency, led by David Brocklehurst, who sadly was killed on Monday in a road traffic accident, need the support of the Veterans Minister as we go forward following the success of peace in Northern Ireland, but no peace when we don't know who murdered Captain Norek.
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I too read over the weekend that the anniversary of the death of Captain Norek was today, and his case is a particularly barbaric one. There is a great deal of work going into the legacy of the Troubles and how investigations should or should not be progressed. My right honourable friend, the Minister for Veterans Affairs, leads on that. I know he will have heard the question that my right honourable friend asked today, and I'm sure he'll want to pick up the issues with him in due course.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could my honourable friend update the House on the progress of the rollout of veterans' ID cards, which I understand is due to be completed by Remembrance Day this year?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I have no reason to believe that the honourable gentleman's expectations are inaccurate, but I will make sure that the Minister for Defence, People and Veterans writes to him in case that is not the case.
We come to Minister Rachel Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And tomorrow is the 60th anniversary of the last serviceman being stood down from national service, and so may I express our thanks to all those who served. The headline findings of the 5-year review of the Armed Forces Compensation Scheme found the process overly burdensome and even distressing. I've heard many complaints about the scheme from veterans and their families, and I'm sure ministers have. So with the government missing its own casework targets, delaying action on the scheme isn't good enough, as it continues to let down our armed forces community. So can I press the Minister on when we will see the final report of the review, and can he confirm that there will be meaningful improvements made to the scheme before summer recess?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, as I've said in response to earlier questions, around £40 million is being invested in the ongoing transformation process to digitise the existing paper-based processes and records. And that will be transformative. These are hundreds of thousands of records kept largely on paper, which make them extraordinarily difficult to process and have caused all of the delays that the Honourable Lady rightly mentions. But since the new online digital claims service was launched through the gov.uk website, the service has been available to service personnel and veterans. The new service has been well received and already accounts for 50% of all new injury and illness claims being made.
Edward Timpson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question 6.
Thursday.
Mr. Speaker, with permission, I'd like to answer questions 6 and 21 together. Defence was pivotal in the success of the wider government effort to evacuate British passport holders and other eligible persons from Sudan. A range of UK military assets and capabilities were deployed in our response, resulting in the evacuation for more than 2,400 people, the longest and largest evacuation of any Western nation from Sudan.
Edward Timpson.
I thank my right honourable friend for that answer. A constituent of mine was holed up in a Khartoum corridor with a French family for days, unable to receive FCDO email or WhatsApp instructions due to the power outages, and my office was having to relay updates to their distressed family. Now, mercifully, Mr. Speaker, he was airlifted out by the French Armée de l'Air, and whilst recognising the complex and challenging nature of the evacuation, what can His Majesty's Government do to help improve awareness of and communications with stranded British citizens in potentially unstable states to enable our armed forces to mount efficient and effective airlifts in the future?
Secretary of State.
My honourable friend raises an important point, but also not an easy issue to solve. In somewhere like Sudan, obviously, we were seeing less than single-digit coverage or access to the internet at any one time in the middle of effectively a civil war, as it was then. For defence, it's an easier thing to solve. We bring our own communications with us, and when 16 Air Assault Brigade deployed, we managed to bring a limited amount of capability that we could try and communicate with British citizens. And for the main part, it is a policy primacy of the Foreign Office. We're always stand by to help them with that advice. But of course, I would also advise that travellers look at advice before they travel, and indeed, we have to find a way through that challenge in communications denied space, but it is not straightforward or easy.
Blake Drummond.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I've been seeing some of the amazing work that the Royal Air Force does through my membership of the Armed Forces Parliamentary Scheme. So can my right honourable friend join me in congratulating the work that the RAF did in Sudan, evacuating over 2,500 people from over 24 countries under very dangerous circumstances? And can he inform the House which other stakeholders made this so successful so we can recognise their work and thank them as well?
Secretary of State.
My honourable friend is right to highlight the RAF. To fly into an airfield with unshore conditions, often in the dark, without much of a advanced recce, is some achievement. We also saw the RAF do that in Kabul, if you remember, in that large evacuation. Alongside the RAF were a specialist unit from 16 Air Assault Brigade that actually helped fix the runway, because of course this runway was not used to the level of demand placed on it, and only Britain had that ability. They flew in, they helped fix the runway. That allowed a better relationship with the Sudanese Armed Forces that allowed us to continue that longer term evacuation. And I think that's an example of the breadth of experience that we carry in the Armed Forces.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. 3 of the 4 Atlas aircrafts used in the evacuation of British nationals from Sudan are reported to have developed faults. 2/3 of the incoming fleet is listed as unavailable, and there remains no clarity the fleet can perform the niche functions our special air and boat services need. Hasn't the Secretary of State made a mistake in pressing ahead with ditching the Hercules fleet in their favour?
Mr. Speaker, I've heard these sort of tired arguments about what we really need to do is just keep the Herc and get rid of the A400 outperforms the Herc on most types. It's got a longer range, bigger capacity, can land in the same area, in fact can land in shorter distance. And in Kabul, of the massive evacuation in Kabul, the A400, one A400 had a fault for 6 hours and managed to continue on its course. The A400 is performing, and as far as the migration to special forces and other capabilities, that is on track, already having done jumps from it and other parts of the area. The simple reality is A400 outperforms it. Its availability was extremely successful. The Hercules only accounts for 10% of the fleet, and the overall fleet for lift is now the biggest it's been for 50 years.
John Spiller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I sort of join the Secretary of State in congratulations to our armed forces on their role here, as indeed in Afghanistan. But isn't there a problem that in Afghanistan, Sudan, but also when during COVID, lots of our citizens were stranded behind around the world, that in fact, while the Ministry of Defence was up for early action, the Foreign Office wasn't. Can we ask that within the machinery of government we actually get a stronger role for the MOD, so we get the can-do attitude of the MOD rather than the can't-do attitude of the Foreign Office?
Well, I can do by helping the right honourable gentleman opposite in making sure that the resilience of the whole of government is supported by the MOD. There are definitely lessons to be learned. I'll make sure those lessons are taken away and shared across government.
Paul Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question number 7.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With your permission, I'd like to answer questions 7 and 24 together. The UK scores highly in the global rankings for defence exports, which creates jobs and prosperity across the country, building the industrial resilience and capacity we need for our national security. Through the Defence and Security Industrial Strategy, DCIS, we and industry are strengthening our position by diversifying our exports and target markets and by collaborating more closely, sir.
Paul Holmes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the Department's announcement that both Germany and the United Kingdom will work together on the development of advanced armour-piercing tank ammunition. Given these new rounds will be able to be fired from both British and German tanks, supporting compatibility within NATO, what export potential does this new capability have?
Well, I'm grateful to my honourable friend, and he is right to highlight this important collaboration with one of our major allies. Enhanced kinetic energy munitions are a key part of the Challenger 3 and Leopard 2 main battle tanks programmes and will deliver battle-winning capabilities to UK and German armed forces. I am confident that their advanced performance will be recognised as world-leading, and their export potential to NATO and other allies will be promoted by the MOD as ever in close partnership with the Department of Business and Trade.
Michael Long.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I congratulate the Defence Secretary and all ministers past and present who may have played their part in securing the £1.9 billion export deal for missiles with Poland? And does he therefore also agree with me that we can significantly strengthen our defence and security relationship with Brazil, and so we can increase exports to that country too?
Well, I'm grateful to my honourable friend, and he is absolutely right to celebrate a great British success story. The MBDA British-designed Common Anti-Air Modular Missile is the latest generation air defence system in service with the Royal Navy and British Army. And Mr. Speaker, I'm sure you'll be interested to know it can engage targets up to 25 kilometres away and is capable of hitting a tennis ball-sized object travelling beyond the speed of sound. It's already deployed in Poland to protect its airspace following Putin's barbaric invasion of Ukraine. We work closely with the Department of Business in Trade, supporting UK Energy's export campaigns through dedicated teams. This network is supporting delivery of numerous campaigns, and I can confirm to him we have a positive defence relationship with Brazil. He makes a very good point. The MOD continues to work with the Brazilian MOD and armed forces on how we and UK industry can support their equipment capability shortfalls and development requirements.
Henry Smith.
Question 9, sir.
There is
Mr. Speaker, I recently accompanied Prime Minister Albanese to Barrow-in-Furness, where the next generation of AUKUS nuclear submarines will be built for the Royal Navy, a testament of our joint commitment. This multi-decade undertaking will create thousands of jobs in the United Kingdom, delivering on the Prime Minister's priority to grow the economy and demonstrates the experience and skills which embodies British industry.
Henry Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I very much welcome the Australian government's decision to design their submarines on the SSN AUKUS model. And I understand that the Australian Prime Minister Albanese was in Barrow recently to see that work. What assessment has my right honourable friend made of the benefits of AUKUS and the design being made in this country in terms of the supply chain across the United Kingdom?
So state.
Building really complicated machines like submarines has the benefit of a very long and broad supply chain. The AUKUS model is going to be truly collaborative. While based on a UK SSNR, I expect it over time to be built by Australian hands, United States skills and supply chain alongside ourselves, which will give opportunities to both Australia and United States and ourselves for supplying a number of these submarines. That's good news for British industry, good news for skills in places like Barrow-in-Furness, but also good news for our alliances with Australia and the United States.
Cavan Jones.
Can I thank the Secretary for his response to that statement? I visited Australia last year and saw the great work that the Australians are undertaking on AUKUS. It's a great national endeavour. Is he confident that in the UK, the Business Department and others actually realise that if we are going to get the benefit out of this exciting project, we need that national endeavour here, especially, for example, on skills and technology across government?
So state.
Well, the right honourable gentleman will know that to get sign-off on a project like this involves me engaging right across government, including the Treasury, to get their buy-in. And once that has been locked in, we then, of course, could progress. So I am confident that the whole of government stands behind this. It's really important not just to regenerate places like Cumbria and the Northwest, but also to lock in a skill base we need for our future. I think it's a really exciting project. It'll be building long after you and I are probably left this house in many decades to come. But, you know, Britain has been at this game for 70 years to the year of nuclear submarines. That is not something that you commit and back out of. We expect Australia, alongside the United States and ourselves, to be doing this for a very long time to the benefit of British jobs.
Shadow Minister Chris Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I welcome the new Minister to his place? I got on with all of his predecessors and I look forward to our exchanges in future. As has already been said, the AUKUS agreement is a real game changer not only for our forces but also for British industry. Now, the government has promised a jobs bonanza for generations to come in places like Derby, Barrow-in-Furness and Devonport in my honourable friend's constituency. Will this promise be underwritten by contractual guarantees and ensure that future generations are trained in the skills that we need for this vital programme?
Well, first of all, they are already underwritten by contractual guarantees. In Barrow-in-Furness, BAE are recruiting from 11,000 to 17,000 jobs. Derby itself is investing for the next generation of reactor, and that is starting. So the key point of AUKUS is not only it gets a commitment from Treasury and the government for the British replacement of the Astute class, but it locks in that potential of Australian supply chain and working together collaboratively, not only for skills here, but also in Australia. So it is already under that process. £2 billion were unlocked recently to start building the infrastructure needed, both in Derby and BAE, in Barrow, and we'll continue to do it. So this is not just the beginning, this is actually further down the path, but the real work starts now.
Neil Hanby.
Number 10, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Dreadnought submarine programme remains within overall budget and on track for the first of class HMS Dreadnought to enter service in the early 2030s. As the programme is in its preliminary phases, it is too early to provide cost estimates for the replacement warhead programme.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The financial cost of WMDs is one thing, but the potential human cost from radiation leaks is quite another. On the 7th of November last year, I raised concerns from a whistleblower about a serious radiation breach at Coalport and Loch Long. The Secretary of State promised he would provide a detailed written response. Despite my persistence, 6 months later, I've not had a reply other than leaked to the media saying that the alleged radiation incident referred to didn't take place. So can the Secretary of State confirm today from the dispatch box if HMNB Clyde staff were moved from Building 201 in Coalport to a Building 41 elsewhere due to a serious radiation breach?
Minister.
Well, I'm grateful, Honourable Gentleman. Obviously, I'll have to look into this matter and write to him further. But I just make one point. He talked about the other costs. If I may say, whilst the SNP has whilst the SNP has a merely quirky position of unilateral nuclear disarmament but remaining in NATO, supposedly, the position of his party, the ALBA party, is both nuclear disarmament and the withdrawal from NATO. We ask ourselves, what would be the cost of that policy? In light of the current situation, where Russia has invaded Ukraine, what would happen if we were to announce our withdrawal from NATO? He should reflect on the cost
Order! Please. That was a long, not really answering the question. I think what I'm more concerned about was in that question. 6 months ago, a letter was put in, there's not been a reply. Can somebody check that? Because I'm bothered about MPs getting replies from ministers, not scoring points. Let's go to Dr Luke Evans.
Number 11, Mr Speaker.
Mr Speaker, I will endeavour to make sure that that reply is got to the honourable member and find out why it has taken so long. I think it is too long if that has been the case. Maybe we put it in the camper van. Right, Mr Speaker, the UK and international partners are committed to providing the capabilities Ukraine requires, including training artillery, air defence and armoured vehicles, and to drive further international donations and resolve this war. However, the Ukrainian people should not be forced into concessions. To ensure the Ukraine is in the best possible position to negotiate, the UK and its partners will continue to provide military and economic support, apply sanctions and increase international pressure on Russia.
Dr Luke Evans.
NATO's key strategic concept is that of ensuring the collective defence of its members. Now, the best way to do this is to secure peace in Ukraine, but given Russian aggression, I support UK and NATO in its work. So what assessment has the Secretary of State made of the likelihood of securing peace? And failing that, the defensive capabilities of the alliance should a war escalate?
Well, first of all, NATO has done a lot of work to make sure that it is ready, and not only from February when the invasion started, but to make sure that we use that readiness to deter Russia on the borders of NATO. And that is incredibly important. And to date, we have not seen any deliberate strikes into a NATO country by Russia. And while we have seen events in the Black Sea, deeply provocative, Russia is so far respecting those NATO borders. I think the most important thing here is to make sure President Putin realises he cannot win this war in Ukraine, that his brutality is having the opposite effect, driven two new nations into NATO and the West, including the United Kingdom, and now I saw from the announcement in Germany, stepping up more and more to make sure Ukraine has success on the battlefield so it can negotiate, if it wishes to, from a position of strength.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, we on this side stand firmly behind support for Ukraine, but Ukraine is depleting our military stockpiles and the government seems to be acting too slowly to replenish them. So what progress has the Secretary of State made on a stockpile strategy, and what talks has he had with NATO allies about their replenishment plans to ensure the most effective sequencing of replenishment?
The Honourable Lady makes an important point that is not just common to the United Kingdom, across Europe. Ukraine has woken everyone up to the issues around things like ammunition stocks. The first challenge was to indeed wake up that supply chain, that many of the orders we'd had placed in the past had been filled and then the supply chain had gone to do something else. We have done that, and now we have placed orders for new NLAWs, if you remember at the beginning, the anti-tank weapons, new anti-aircraft missiles, obviously from Thales in Northern Ireland, in conjunction with our Swedish and I think Finnish colleagues, and we are currently in the process of hopefully awarding a contract for 155 shells to replenish. At the same time, I've worked across the international community to make sure we try and stimulate those supply chains to make sure Ukraine goes well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Could I welcome the visit of President Zelensky to the UK today? There's clearly a warm relationship developing between the President and our Prime Minister. We have a proud track record of providing those NLAWs, first to do so, providing trading on Salisbury Plain, providing those main battle tanks, providing those long-range weapon systems. What next? Maybe fast jets as well. There's much talk of a counter-offensive, but could I ask the Secretary of State about the comments of Yevgeny Prigozhin, the leader of the Wagner Group, now openly criticising President Putin for absence of ammunition, tactics on the battlefield as well? Is he concerned that if this counter-offensive is successful, that terrain is gained, that Russia, Putin will turn ugly and resort to non-conventional chemical weapon systems, such as chemical weapons and biological, as he did in Syria?
Look, we always have to be on our guard about the behaviours of the Russian military and indeed President Putin. As he rightly comments, the use of chemical weapons in Syria was another turning point. The use of chemical weapons here on the streets of the United Kingdom in the poison of in Skripal's poisoning in Salisbury. We are on our guard. The international community regularly communicates. We stand ready with NATO. We increase our readiness as we do, and we have started to increase the investment in our capabilities. All important, but he is right. We have to be very much on our guard about what happens next.
Margaret Faraday. Mr. Speaker, figures show that NATO allies and partner countries have provided Ukraine with more than 98% of the combat vehicles that were promised. What steps are ministers taking to ensure that Ukraine continues to see high levels of support from NATO?
NATO allies regularly meet alongside other international partners at Ramstein in Germany, where it is a US-chaired donation conference which built on my first initial international conferences. It is a regular drumbeat to keep up on that. And as you can tell, President Zelensky and of course other members of his government are regular visitors to international communities to keep that momentum going. Britain is at the forefront of that momentum. We'll continue to do so. Our determination is to see it through.
Dan Jarvis.
Number 13, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are driving the delivery of capability to the front line. When requirements, budget and risk are clear, we have proven our ability to deliver, and the majority of our programmes are on or ahead of time and budget. The Ministry of Defence has set out an affordable 10-year equipment plan to ensure that our armed forces are being given what they need whilst living within our means.
Dan Jarvis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I heard what the Secretary of State said earlier about Atlas, and he's previously given me commitments that there wouldn't be any loss of capability. But today, Deborah Haynes at Sky News is reporting that the UK will be left dangerously exposed when the C-130J is cut next month. And this comes amid concerns that its successor, the Atlas A400M, has yet to be cleared to perform the niche but mission-critical functions of the C-130J. So can I ask the Minister to give an absolute assurance that our defence procurement system will ensure that there is no loss of operational capability?
I am more than happy to give him that assurance. I know that there is a great deal of affection for the Hercules, but just to go back to what the Secretary of State was talking about in terms of the recent performance in Sudan, it was such an important operation. The largest number of evacuees carried out from Sudan by a Hercules was 143. The largest number in an A400, I can confirm, was around 100 more than that.
Dave Dugan, the SNP spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Continuity, focus and a relentless grip on the detail are the hallmarks of a competent Defence Procurement Minister. Now, in less than a year, we're on our 4th Defence Procurement Minister, so we haven't got the continuity bit nailed down. Can the new Minister reassure the House of his competence by perhaps enlightening us to the most challenging defence procurement issue on his desk this week?
I think I look to my left and right and I do see continuity, Mr Speaker. Of course, I'm grateful to follow in the steps of my right honourable friend, the Member for Cheltenham, who is now the Lord Chancellor and Secretary of State for Justice, who did a sterling job. I think I would say, to give one example, obviously, the Honourable Lady previously mentioned this about the issue of replenishment. And I have recently had the privilege to visit British troops training Ukrainian forces, as the chair of the Select Committee referred to earlier. And we have to remember, it's not just that we are training 15,000 personnel to go back out to Ukraine and defend their homeland, but every time they go, we are giving them the kit, high-quality kit, which... Sorry, Mr. We're giving them high-quality kit. And I think there are lessons to learn from what's happened in Ukraine, but we should be incredibly proud of that effort. We've procured at pace, we've gifted in kind, and we have ensured that Ukraine has been able to sustain its fight to this day.
Dugan.
Well, that's crystal clear, Mr Speaker. However, one of the things he said, talking about Ukraine in answer to my question about procurement, was about replenishment. And he will know, even in his short tenure in the job, that SMEs are the lifeblood of any military-industrial complex. So can he explain why, in answer to my parliamentary question a couple of weeks ago, asking if the MOD would attend a public sector Meet the Buyer event in Edinburgh, which is attended by other UK government departments, this £50 billion resourced organisation in the MOD cited a lack of resource for attending that Meet the Buyer event? Is that a special kind of indifference that's reserved for Scotland?
Minister.
Of course not. I mean, I'm happy to look into that, but I just want to assure him the latest figures, Mr Speaker, show that the proportion of MOD spend with MODs has increased from 19.3% in 2018-19 to 23% in 2021. I ran an SME before coming to this place. It wasn't a defence SME, but I know how important they are. They give us creativity, innovation. I want to work with them and the primes delivering British defence industry, because we see that as a key part of our own defence capability.
Jason McCall.
Question 15, please, Mr Speaker.
The UK, our allies and partners continue to respond decisively to support Ukraine as the conflict evolves. We have trained over 15,000 recruits, provided £2.4 billion of support, including artillery ammunition, as well as leading the world on gifting of vital capabilities such as the multi-launch rocket systems, Challenger 2 tanks and now Storm Shadow missiles.
Mr Speaker, can I congratulate my right honourable friend again on the announcement on the delivery of long-range Storm Shadow missiles to Ukraine. I'm proud that the UK has been able to provide this vital capability to the Ukrainians ahead of their long-expected counter-offensive. And given that the Ukrainians, Mr Speaker, will need all the support they can for this, can my right honourable friend please reassure me that the second spending round of the International Fund for Ukraine is proceeding at pace, and when might we expect to see contracts placed with the remaining £300 million?
Well, my honourable friend will be glad to know that the round 2 was launched last month and is seeking the expression of interest in a phased approach, beginning with the needs for air defence, long-range strike and mobility support, which will also be open to huge numbers of SMEs to obviously apply. Submissions are being assessed right now and more requirements will be launched in the coming weeks. Successful companies will be chosen by the UK alongside our IRFU partners, and contracting will begin as soon as possible.
We now move to topicals with Catherine McKinnon.
Topical number 1, Mr Speaker.
Thursday.
Mr Speaker, I'd like to place on record my thanks to all the members of our armed forces who contributed to the coronation parade. It was a remarkable day in the history of the nation. It was both an immense privilege and a solemn responsibility for the Ministry of Defence and our armed forces to fulfil. I would like to thank them once again for contributing in an exemplary way and with such extraordinary personal commitment and dedication, while also meeting all other operational requirements. We are immensely proud of you all and are privileged to belong to the defence community.
Catherine McKinnon.
Thank you, and I very much echo the Secretary of State's comments in their entirety. The visit of President Zelensky today highlights how vital a collective approach is to our national defence and security. So to that end, what steps is the government taking to ensure we have
security and defence agreements in place with our nearest allies in response to Russian aggression, our nearest allies in Europe?
Secretary of State.
The Honourable Lady is absolutely right. We get our strength through coalition, we get our strength through our alliances, and NATO is obviously the most successful military alliance the world has seen. But in addition to that, I led the way in making sure that countries weren't covered by NATO at the time. Sweden and Finland signed together a sort of mutual defence pact that we did back about 2 years ago. No one thought by then that they would be joining NATO. So what we do is we encourage people to join NATO where they apply in the open door policy, and at the same time, other nations we seek to join with MOUs and other agreements to try and bolster that enabling alliance.
Rob Roberts.
Thank you. Following on from the groundbreaking work that my honourable friend for Wrexham did on the experience of women in the military, constituents in Delyn were pleased to hear the announcement of a women's veterans strategy. Could the Minister provide us with an update and a timeline as to when that might be implemented?
I can. I will write to him because that will be the responsibility of the Office of Veterans Affairs in detail, but I'm very happy to go further with that with him and explain the details.
So, Secretary of State John Healey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We welcome President Zelensky's visit and the extra military aid announced today. And Ukraine has reinforced the importance of strong deterrence and army numbers. While NATO is responding by increasing its high readiness force to 300,000, the Defence Secretary is still set on cutting the British Army to its smallest size since Napoleon. So will he halt these cuts in next month's Defence Command paper?
Secretary of State.
Speaker, I've been really clear that this is not a numbers game. This is about making sure whatever size our armed forces is, we have a completely well-equipped, well-looked-after workforce. If we just simply go on a numbers game without the appropriate funding, and I've heard no commitments from the Labour Party, Mr. Speaker, we go back to a world that I served in under both governments where we had numbers on paper, numbers on parade ground, but hollow forces. I won't repeat that. I'll make sure that whatever we have is fully equipped and fully 360, and that's the real lesson of Ukraine.
Well, Labour's argued for over 2 years for a halt to these cuts, Mr. Speaker, and despite his bluster, the truth is he's failed to get the new money for defence, apart from nuclear and for stockpiles. So why won't he just admit it? Far from responding to the threats that Britain faces, he's cutting the army to cut costs.
Stay.
Well, it's like through the looking glass, Mr. Speaker. I mean, the reality is I've achieved as Defence Secretary an increase of over £24 billion, gusting further, both in Ardell in parts and also in capital spend. It's simply important that this House understands that the world is changing, the battlefield is changing, and if we simply go to a numbers game, we'll head back to a First World War. What we need is to learn the lessons, equip people properly, support them properly, and I still haven't heard from the opposite side a single mention of their defence budget because, of course, reversing the cuts will cost billions of pounds. I hear nothing so far.
I don't think we've any responsibility today, so we'll go to Dr Luke Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I've recently had the privilege to become the Honorary Hinckley Branch Royal British Legion President. And my first engagement was to join the Hinckley Armed Forces and Veterans Breakfast Club in the Hansom Cab in Burbage for their 5th year celebration. Now, this amazing organisation helps veteran men and women, providing the support, companionship and banter for those who've served. Will he thank all those who give their time? And more importantly, what more can he do to support those in the armed forces and the veterans breakfast clubs?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, well, may I congratulate my honourable friend on his presidential duties at the Hinckley branch of the Royal British Legion. My own branch in Burnham-on-Sea will just about let me make the tea. He's absolutely right to draw attention to the fantastic work of veterans breakfast clubs. The government has supported them through the Armed Forces Covenant Fund Trust. I know that support is as well received in his constituency as it is in mine, Mr. Speaker, where there's an excellent club in Glastonbury.
Judith Cummins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With the UK today pledging a new package of military support to Ukraine, what assessment has the Minister made of the pace of delivery of these vital supplies to Ukraine?
The United Kingdom has been at the forefront in ensuring right from the start that the supplies get into the country as soon as possible, basing people not only in Germany, the international donor coordination cell, actually at the hub of it, over 70 military personnel there, but also in the neighbouring countries to make sure the logistics reaches the place in time. We're still managing to commit to that pace. Some countries, as President Zelensky has said, have made pledges, but part of the delay is them getting their equipment ready to donate. Ours are already in, our 12 challenges are already in the country. We'll make sure we keep monitoring it and pushing it as fast as possible.
Sarah Atherton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Mayor of London has generously permitted 54,000 friends and family of TfL workers free travel around London. He's also granted police officers from 8 services free travel when not in uniform. Could the Minister explain to service personnel, particularly from Woolwich Barracks, why they can only travel free whilst in full uniform, which makes them and those around them a target, and whether there are any plans to rectify this discrepancy?
Good question. Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Labour Mayor of London is also expanding the ULEZ charge, which will affect thousands of armed forces personnel who are based in the outer boroughs. I suspect that our colleagues opposite will have heard this impact on their cost of living and be urgently encouraging their mayor to make sure that free travel is extended to armed forces personnel travelling not in uniform.
Transition to the new NATO force model has to be complete by this year. So can ministers update the House as to how ready the UK is to have more capability at greater readiness so that we can continue to play our leading role in NATO?
Supreme Allied Commander Europe recently issued his regional plans, which extend to 3,000 pages of detailed plans for the defence of Europe, and from that will stem a donation conference where all the member states put forward their contribution to those plans. Within that, we'll develop the new force model that will contribute to the new force structure of NATO, and therefore I'll be able to come later, once we've got through that period in the next few months, to tell the House exactly what we have put forward, how ready it is, and whether it meets the ask of the Supreme Allied Commander Europe.
Mark Francois.
Thank you, sir. Clive Sheldon KC of 11 Kings Bench Walk Chambers submitted his lessons learned report on the Ajax programme to the MOD some 4 months ago. But we're told it's still going through a fact-checking process. However, there are growing rumours that some people who are adversely implicated in the report are trying to water down or even suppress its publication. As the Secretary of State personally commissioned the report, and as it's his birthday today, and as this is, I think, my 4th time of asking, can he please give us all a birthday present and tell us when it's actually going to be published?
Happy birthday.
I hear, thank you, what a birthday, Mr. Speaker. I hear my right honourable friend, he's absolutely right. I have asked, not only because I have not yet seen either the draft, to see the draft as well as the final report, so I can make sure that with my own eyes I decide whether it's appropriate or not to be changed. I think it's incredibly important. It hasn't come to me yet. I am told, after raising it recently, that it is imminent to make sure it comes to me. He's got a real point here, which is I'm not in the business of shielding people from their errors. I'm interested in learning lessons.
Sir Mark Hendry.
Mr. Speaker, yourself, the Defence Secretary and myself have thousands of constituents who work at BAE Systems in Lancashire. They've been working obviously very hard on Typhoon, F-35, but for the last couple of years there's been a great deal of excitement and hype about the Tempest programme. It's at the moment, I understand, still a concept in terms of its development. Could the Secretary of State for Defence tell the House when detailed design and production is likely to take place?
My right honourable friend raises an important point for not only our part of the world, but actually the whole United Kingdom and its place in being able to deliver a sovereign capability. I recently went to Japan, where I signed another agreement with my Japanese counterpart and my Italian counterpart. The GCAP programme, as it's now called, but to us it's Tempest, is incredibly important for jobs in the northwest. It is already moving into the design phase, and then we'll get into the work, the political balance of how much work share is shared out amongst the partners. But there is a strong government commitment to take this forward. Before 2030, we expect to see test flight, and then it will progress strongly for all of our sakes.
Dr. Caroline Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on the 1st of March, there were more than 22,000 armed forces personnel declared as category 2 or 3 on the basis of their teeth, meaning they have suboptimal dental fitness. On top of that, my constituents who are the spouses and dependents of military personnel are struggling due to the frequent house moves to get dental treatment with an NHS dentist. Can my honourable friend tell me what he is doing and his department is doing to to ensure that we meet the obligations to our service personnel and their families.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I understand my honourable friend met with my right honourable friend, the Minister for Defence, People and Veterans, recently to discuss this matter. For Defence Service personnel, their access to dentistry is more than would be expected by the general population. Beyond where people are currently awaiting dental care ahead of deployment, their care is prioritised. As for the wider issue relating to dental provision for service families, she raises an important point. I'll make sure it's reflected to Ministers in the Department of Health and Social Care. There are, of course, Armed Forces Covenant issues in the matter she raises.
Board.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And it was good to hear that the Appledore shipyard in Devon will see the construction of modules for the 3 support ships for the Royal Fleet Auxiliary, as announced last November. It's been reported in the press in the last week that shipyards belonging to our ally, Poland, will construct blocks of hull for the Type 31 frigate, with final assembly carried out at Rosyth. What parts of the Type 31 will be built in Poland, and what value will these amount to?
Secretary of State.
My understanding is that the smallest part, 1%, will be built in Poland. That is, of course, Babcock's decision made under that original contract, but overall it will be completed at Rosyth. I've already been up there to visit, and I'm also delighted that, for example, under the contract model we put together for Future Support Ship, it enabled places like Appledore to get work, because that is important that we keep all our yards busy and not just go from feast to famine.
Simon Baines.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will my right honourable friend comment on the ways in which the Ministry of Defence is maximising defence procurement from Wales, particularly from North East Wales, where my constituency of Clwyd South is situated?
I'm grateful to my honourable friend. Wales plays an integral part in all aspects of the UK's defence policy, Mr. Speaker, with a number of the MOD's major suppliers and SMEs having a presence there. In 2021, for example, MOD awarded a £110 million contract with the Raytheon UK plant in North Wales, which is providing the RAF with one of the world's most modern and capable intelligence gathering assets. We're also working with the Welsh Government and Defence Electronics and Components Agency to create an advanced technology research centre at MOD Sealand. The ATRC will develop cutting-edge sovereign capabilities to support international collaboration, job sustainment and skills retention whilst meeting our changing defence requirements.
Kim Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to start by thanking the PCS Union and staff at DBS for the work in negotiating important wins for disabled and non-mobile staff who have been offered flexible and hybrid working as a reasonable adjustment, not forcing staff to move without their agreement, as well as the creation of a voluntary release package is a positive step. So can the Secretary of State commit to ongoing negotiations with PCS and Liverpool staff to keep their terms under review to ensure staff are given support necessary to keep their jobs and under reasonable conditions?
Minister.
Well, I'm grateful to the Honourable Lady, and I'm glad that she recognises I think it has been a very constructive negotiation. As she mentions the offer, for example, of flexible working. As she knows, to date there have been no compulsory redundancies, and I would just stress that even with the £30 million cost of the new site, this will bring a total £40 million saving, so it's good value for taxpayers as well as, we believe, a good deal for the workforce.
Courts.
Can I welcome the new Minister to his place? It was great to visit, for him to visit Carterton recently, I think for his first visit, where we discussed the upgrading of existing MOD housing and the purchase of new. And I look forward to discussing that with him some more in the subcommittee report that the Defence Select Committee will shortly be doing. But he also saw the large brownfield site known as Rima North, which the MOD housing has been demolished, not yet replaced because the money hasn't been found to do it. Now, we always talk about prioritising brownfield land. Here's a prime site where it's much needed and the money hasn't yet been found. Will he work with me to make sure that we not only use this brownfield land, but we protect West Oxfordshire's land supply and give the RAF the homes they need?
Great, my friend. Very much enjoyed my visit to Brize Norton. It's actually my second visit after Abbey Wood. But just to be clear, we remain fully committed to the development of new housing at the Rima site for service personnel. Are in discussion with industry partners to facilitate this. But given the time that's elapsed, I'm happy to continue engaging with him because I know that he's a champion of his local service personnel, Mr. Speaker. So many of them serving the RAF. More than happy to stay engaged with him.
Alex Norris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In March, 8,000 Afghan Relocations and Assistance Policy Scheme families were given eviction notices from their hotel accommodation by the Home Office. What assurances can we hear from the Ministry of Defence ministers that these people will not become homeless?
Thursday.
I can only talk on behalf of the Arab cohort of people in the hotels. At the beginning of this process, over half just went straight into the community and found places either with families and friends. The ones in the hotel, Arab lodges are different from the general asylum scheme. They can claim benefits, they can claim housing benefits, they can work immediately they arrive. It is time that we find a way of getting them out into the community and out of hotels so they can start working. They have that ability. That's the way that they can not only integrate into society but actually get on their own 2 feet. And I think it was right at the time that we took a stand that some of these people have been there for a long time. It is time to move out and use the rights they have coming here under ARAP.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I've been led to believe that the issue facing the Prince of Wales has been due to a almost incredible complacency and engineering tolerances in the shaft. May I ask my honourable friend if there is any financial recourse to the manufacturer in being able to get the Prince of Wales operational again?
From the initial reports I have read, the misalignment of the shaft is something around 0.8 millimetres or 1 millimetre, a tiny difference that, of course, can make a huge difference out to sea. We are examining the liabilities and who should cough up for that. The good news is it hasn't delayed overall Prince of Wales's time and work up. We took advantage of some of these maintenance periods to put in already pre-planned maintenance, and I think she's going to be back on track and on time to deliver her capability.
Emma Hardy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recently met with a school pupil called Elizabeth Wilson, who is also a member of Hull Youth Parliament and the daughter of an armed forces personnel. Her campaign is to establish an armed forces champion within every school to assist pupils with transition, but also to be there to provide peer-on-peer support. What additional support can the Minister give to this young entrepreneur with this project?
Thursday.
I'm very happy to meet with that young entrepreneur and indeed with the Minister of Veterans Affairs. I think it's an excellent idea. It would plug in perfectly to the local authorities' forces champions, obviously, with their remit over local education. I think it's a really, really good idea. Thank you.
Dean Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I share my condolences for David Brocklehurst's family. He's be a massive loss for the Abbots Langley Veterans Association, as was mentioned by my right honourable friend for Hemel Hempstead earlier. May I, through the front bench, please thank the Minister for Veterans Affairs for his recent visit to Watford to meet with veterans, including the Abbots Langley Veterans Association group, to hear about the fantastic initiatives in Watford, but also Luther Blissett OBE's Forces United initiative. Thank you.
Thursday.
Our veterans are very, very important to the fabric of society. It's really important that this is the best place in the world to be a veteran. I think this government's been on the right track in delivering that. Yes, there are some things around a veterans card. Yes, there are some things about the services. But I think, the Armed Forces Covenant, the agreement of many parts of government to support it, is in the right direction, and we're going from strength to strength.
I can speak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In 1969, 74 US personnel perished after the USS Evans sank. There were 2 Royal Navy personnel from my constituency present who've just been invited to a commemoration, but they're struggling to get there. Could a minister meet with me to look at options to enable them, to help them get there?
Thursday.
I'll be delighted to try and do that, either through myself or the Defence Veterans Minister.
James Sunderland.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister will know that I've got constituents in substandard military accommodation at Sandhurst who, when they asked for help from the Pinnacle SF contract over Christmas, it did not turn up. Could I please ask him whether he will use the relative lull of the summer months to plan ahead with the contractors to make sure that we don't have another problem at Christmas?
Anybody? Secretary Steele.
I've already met with the contractors and DIO. The good news is that the maintenance issues that are around at Christmas have been cut by 75%. It's continuing in the right direction, but he's absolutely right. The key here is going to be planning ahead for the next winter. That's what we're on with at the moment, and I'm very determined to hold these contractors to account.
Douglas Chapp.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. HMS Prince of Wales currently lies in Rosyth for repairs, and I hear it's been cannibalised for spare parts. Will this £3 billion asset be back in full operational duties by the end of this year?
Yes, by the autumn. And by the way, cannibalisation, it is perfectly normal for ships to take ship stores from each other. This is not being cannibalised because somehow this ship's off to be mothballed. This ship is going to be back in full service in autumn.